In today's video, I'm gonna be looking at just going into the implications of a recent study that suggests that quantum principles are behind genetic mutations in DNA. Now, this sounds a little bit weird and all over the place. I posted a video last week about how quote-unquote mindfulness, thoughts, intention, what constitutes what some people may call a lifestyle choices, not lifestyle choices. At the end of the day, is a mental process can affect the very DNA of the subjects, and there's a study behind that. A lot of people don't see the connection of what I'm talking about here, but it's all part of the same thing. Now, the research study that I'm going to be looking into today, it goes into how these genetic mutations may be caused by quantum principles. Now, the main issue is that when we think about quantum physics, we think about the world, we think about reality, we think about the universe, we think about how we perceive reality, but we don't think about our body, we don't think about ourselves. And there's this emerging field, and they go into it in the article, of quantum biology, which looks into whether or not there are quantum principles in ourselves and what constitute us as human beings. And that's the implication, and that's the reality of it. Everything is made of subatomic particles. That's the main issue. The main issue in quantum physics, the role of the observer, this spooky action at a distance, this not knowing what's the intelligence behind what forms our world, what creates a reality, what makes the wave principle collapse into particles. And I talk about it. All the videos, as usual, is going to be below. I'm going to be talking about this a lot. All of these issues are transferred into what constitute us as human beings, and even the very alteration and these mutations in the building blocks of life, quote unquote, are very DNA. Now, the implications of this, of course, for well-being, for health, are huge, but it goes even beyond. As I've been saying, all of this ties into what I've been talking about in this channel. I've been talking about the placebo effect, I've been talking about healings, I've been talking about this quantum consciousness, the idea of a unified field, the afterlife, what happens. In that video where I talked about the theory of the soul, on how this quantum information is within the cells in our brain, and then they drain at the time of that. All of it is connected, and the pieces of the puzzle are coming together. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about how they study and the whole concept of quantum biology adds into the theories of quantum consciousness. It's the idea of the unified field of consciousness, and what might be the intelligence behind the behavior of these subatomic particles. Before I move forward, I would like to remind you that if you want to join the growing discussion on consciousness and would like to be notified on the latest scientific discoveries and theories surrounding this topic and how they connect to ancient mythologies and philosophies, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, as I'll try to upload at least one video per week as I continue with the outline. Alright, so in today's video, I'm going to be looking at this article. New research reveals that quantum physics causes mutations in our DNA. Last week I uploaded a video about DNA and how thoughts, intentions, or what is called quote-unquote mindfulness. It has been proven, there's a study right there, that it affects our DNA positively. And a lot of people, these types of videos don't do as well as some of my other videos, and a lot of people, I get a lot of backlash from the community, from social media, because people just don't get it, don't understand it, they don't see the connection between us and perhaps the possibility that the intelligence that guides these subatomic particles is consciousness, is mind, is the observer effect. They don't see the connection, they think it's just nonsense. But as I've been making these videos, all of it starts coming together. It's like pieces of a puzzle, and I'm like going into a deeper rabbit hole, but all of the videos that I've been posting are connected to each other. This is why you will find below or somewhere in the screen where I talk about them, the videos associated with this. I'm gonna keep doing this because I'm not talking about nonsense about DNA. all that I'm talking about related to DNA, related to the placebo effect, so on and so forth, it adds to the whole theory of the unified field of consciousness, of the quantum, what is called the quote-unquote quantum field of consciousness. I made a video on the theory of the soul. That's the most important, one of the most important videos that I made, and all of it is coming together. So today I'm going to be doing this. New research reveals that quantum physics causes mutations in our DNA. The implication is that the subatomic particles within our body, DNA, the building blocks of life, act as with the principles of quantum physics, something that we don't really think about. But when we think about quantum physics and everything is made of subatomic particles, we think about the world outside and reality at large. We don't really think about our bodies, but it's the same thing, and this is what this research reveals. So I'm still getting this argument in social media. Usually post things, and I try to make the titles kind of convey the idea that I'm going to be talking about. People say things like, "Oh, I hope you have something more than a YouTube video to prove this," or "Oh, yes, I'm going to believe a YouTube video," and so on and so forth. This is not a YouTube video. This is not a blog. I'm going to be reviewing this one, this SciTech Daily, a little bit of sort of a tabloid science news thingies, because I find that these articles are usually more elaborate and more creative than their counterparts, who are very restricted to this through this scientific dogma. But more often than not, I'm going to be linking some other articles that are talking about the same thing, and always on this playlist of ongoing research, I'm going to be linking to a published study. This is the study right here for anyone who is interested about what's actually happening, what is actually going on. It talks about the hydrogen particles and how they create these. They might be behind the mutations in DNA, which is based off a quantum principle. I'm going to be going into it. You can go read the article in the actual where it comes from the University of Surrey. You can read different articles a little bit more organized at phys.org, physics news and whatsoever. The same article is the same, but I'm going to be talking about this one right here. And of course, you can find all the links to these articles and to the study below. Alright, so this article was posted on May 30th, 2022. I've been seeing it this month going on around, but this is actually for 2021. That's when the actual study was published. It goes into saying, an innovative study has confirmed that quantum mechanics play a role in biological processes and causes mutations in DNA. This is what I'm saying. When we think about quantum mechanics, quantum physics, we think about reality at large. We think about the double slit experiment. We think about the world around us, whether a tree fell in the woods. Did it happen or not? Did somebody see it? But we do not think about our own body, about our biological process. We think that it's separate. We think there's that duality within also the mind and body that I talked about in the previous video. But it seems that we're talking about the same thing, and there's this new field called quantum biology. Well, not really new, but this is gaining traction. Quantum biology is an emerging field of science established in the 1920s, which looks at whether the subatomic world of quantum mechanics plays a role in living cells. Now, this is what I was talking in the previous video about mind control and mentalism. I know it sounds a little bit flashy and it sounds a little bit far-fetched, but that's what we are talking about here. So the biggest, all the issues in quantum physics. So the main issue in quantum physics is the observer effect, and the way that the quantum world acts in very strange, quote-unquote, weird ways, where one particle exists somewhere and then it disappears and then it shows up somewhere else, like it's not real, like it's not physical, how everything is a wave of probability, and only when we look at it, it manifests, it collapses that wave function into a particle. Now, I made that video about the experiment that cracked reality wide open, and I talk about the double slit experiment. I'm gonna link it somewhere on the screen. You can find it below. In that, I add some of the newest information that they found about that experiment. I go in depth into it, and one one of the implications is that, because I get this argument a lot as well when I talk about the metaphysical and I talk about the idea that there's a non-physical realm of reality, frame set of reality that we're starting to understand through this quantum biology and through this quantum physics research. And people often say, use the argument, oh, I'll believe in these things when somebody manifests a unicorn in front of me. Okay, that's a little bit silly. That I know that people are trying to be hostile. It makes sense. This is not what we're talking about. I even said it in that video. I'm not talking about someone manifesting a bed or a tree in front of you. What I'm talking about is the possibility that we may influence, even perhaps, the subatomic particles in our own body. What would be the implications in health? What would be the implications if we think about some other things? Let's just even think about the implications that this would do to the medical fields and to health at large, and even beyond. If the issue in quantum physics, the observer effect, could modify reality at large, what could it manifest within our living cells, the building blocks of reality, DNA itself? In a research paper published by the journal Physical Chemistry Chemical Physics, a team from Surrey's Leverhulme Quantum Biology Doctoral Training Center used state-of-the-art computer simulations and quantum mechanical methods to determine the role proton tunneling, a purely quantum phenomenon, plays in spontaneous mutations inside DNA. Proton tunneling involves the spontaneous disappearance of a proton from one location and the same proton's reappearance nearby. This is what the physicists in the 1900s started to call these spooky effects, these weird things that they didn't understand. They realized that everything is made of particles. Everything at the subatomic level is these building blocks of reality. And now what the real that is a fact, that is a given, that's what they saw. The problem is that they don't know what makes them act how they act, what makes them do these things, that they just disappear and they appear somewhere else, like they are not even real, like they do not exist, and then they exist again, and then they are waves, they are possibilities, and then they are particles, they solidify themselves. So this is the idea that it's not real, it's an illusion, it's a hologram, it's smoke. Now the big question about quantum physics, I'm going to be repeating this, I know that it's been repeated and I repeat it, but this is the problem, this is the issue, this is what we have to understand. The real problem to understand by philosophy, by science, by anyone is what is the intelligence that makes these particles act in a certain way. What creates a tree and what creates an organ, a human organ, a human heart. What's the intelligence that guides these particles to create these things? Now we start going into the theory of morphic fields. And I'm going to be going into that theory from Rupert Sheldrake and some others, that they think that there's intelligence like on certain areas. What is the intelligence behind that? What guides it? Now, there's some intelligence that we cannot tap into. We cannot understand what creates a lung and what creates a tree. But when we start going into the research and when we see things like that study that I reviewed on the previous video, which I'm going to link it somewhere on the screen right now, on how our mental state and our mind can modify our DNA. When we start going into something, we see those studies on healings and on these healers, and I talked about it, and I was looking into the research from the Institute of Noetic Science, with that researcher Dean Radin and some of his experiments where they look at the molecules of water in the areas where healings were conducted, and they see the changes at the molecular level, so thinking that the process of the healing created an effect at the molecular level in that space, in that area where the healing was performed. I'm going to link it somewhere on the screen. These are real experiments. These are published studies, and they're all right there in those videos, as I've been saying. Everything on ongoing research in a rational divine outline is going to be based on actual studies which have been published. You can find the links below. So when we look into these things, we start coming to the idea, it starts leading us to this concept that perhaps what we call thoughts, what we call intention, what we call mind, what we call quote-unquote consciousness, might be behind the way that the particles at the subatomic level act. Okay, the research team found that atoms of hydrogen, which are very light, provide bonds that hold the two strands of DNA's double helix together and can, under certain conditions, behave like spread out waves that can exist in multiple locations at once. This is a principle of quantum physics, thanks to proton tunneling. This leads to these atoms occasionally being found on the wrong strand of DNA, leading to mutations. So these disappear and they appear somewhere and they create actual physical mutations. Although these mutations' lifetime is short, the team from Surrey has revealed that they can still survive the DNA replication mechanism inside the cells and could potentially have health consequences. So these might be behind mutations in DNA. What causes them, we don't know, but they just happen out of nowhere. They're based on quantum principles. As I said, you can go to the actual thing and go through the whole thing, how they recreated this, how they found all these things. There's the equations, everything is right there. Dr. Mark Saki, the project lead and Royal Society University Research Fellow at the University of Surrey, said, "Many have long suspected the quantum world, which is weird, counterintuitive, and wonderful, plays a role in life as we know it, while the idea that something can be present in two places at the same time, not real, it's smoke, it's an illusion, might be absurd to many of us. This happens all the time in the quantum world, and our study confirms that quantum tunneling also happens in DNA at room temperature." So this is what we are looking at, that the principles from quantum physics are transferred to DNA, the building blocks of life itself, what makes us as humans and as beings. I'm going to repeat, the implication is that the issue in quantum physics, the question, what is the intelligence behind how these subatomic particles behave, is transferred to biology, to our bodies, to what makes us as humans. Louis Lowcomb, a PhD student at Leverhulme Quantum Biology Doctoral Training Center and co-author of this study, said, "There is still a long and exciting road ahead of us to understand how biological processes work on the subatomic level, but our study and countless others," everything is stacking up, this is what I've been saying, "over the recent years, people keep bringing me the argument, oh, where are you basing yourself on a blog post or on a..." No, it's a published studies that have been out in the recent years. A lot of people think that science stopped in the 90s and anything that is not found on a textbook that is highly outdated from the 90s is not true. This is just ridiculous. Countless others over the recent years have confirmed quantum mechanics are at play. In the future, we are hoping to investigate how tautometers produced by quantum tunneling can propagate and generate genetic mutations. This quantum tunneling is this process that is this principle made by quantum physics, where these particles just appear, disappear, exist in both places at the same time. This is the spookiness of quantum physics, and it just happens, and it's weird, and it's like it's not even real. It's like it acts however it wants to act. But they create actual changes and actual genetic mutations in our physical reality. It manifests. They are these changes, these random changes, they manifest, and their wave-like probability is collapsed, and it creates actual things, actual mutations. This is, as I said, this has been in different, like it says right here, countless other studies. I published, I uploaded that video with that published study about how through our thoughts, through mindfulness, we can affect our DNA. It's been proven. This is what's happening. Now, what are the implications? That's what I'm going to be talking about in just a second here. Jim Al-Khalili, co-author of the study and co-director of the Leverhulme Quantum Biology Doctoral Training Center at the University of Surrey, he's happy about working with this group of people. This work cements quantum biology as the most exciting field of scientific research in the 21st century. Now, this is what I'm saying. The problem in quantum physics is huge. It's about reality and life. It's about what creates reality, what we perceive, what happens to these subatomic particles, and what is the intelligence behind it. This is the, and when you talk about Albert Einstein and his ideas on God, this God of the universe, this universe at large, this intelligence behind everything, what is it? Now, a lot of people don't relate it together. They think they're different things. The cells in our bodies, what creates us as human beings, is something different. And quantum physics is this weird thing that happens at the micro level. No, everything is made of subatomic particles, including our body, our DNA, the building blocks of who we are. Now, what is the same issues from quantum physics is transferred to biology, to what we are as human beings. What is the intelligence behind these subatomic particles? That is the question, and that is the implication. Alright, so now that I'm done with the main article, I wanna give some sort of TLDR, some sort of the main implication, final thoughts that I have about this, how I connect to the whole theme and theory of quantum consciousness. So the article speaks about how it's been confirmed through this study that quantum tunneling occurs in DNA, inside DNA. Quantum biology is looking at whether quantum mechanics and the principles of quantum mechanics apply in living cells. The confirmation is done. It happens. As I said, I posted a video before talking about this. So now I spoke all throughout the video about how the same issues in quantum physics are transferred then into the realm of biology, into who we are, what makes us as human beings or as beings. Now, in order to not make this video any longer, I'm just gonna talk about the biggest issue in quantum physics. What is the biggest issue in quantum physics? Is the measurement problem, the observer effect. I talked about this in the main video that I made about the double slit experiments. The link is gonna be below. The experiment that cracked reality wide open. I go in depth into this, but to make it short, scientists in the 1900s were baffled that it required human conscious observation of a phenomenon for it to be collapsed, to be real, to be made into particles, for these particles to be particles instead of waves, instead of probabilities, instead of smoke. Now, this theory, a lot of scientists have rejected this theory. They say that this is what is showing. Nobody really knows. Nobody has a final answer on quantum physics. This is what is showing. And of course, scientists cannot accept this. They cannot prove it. They cannot deny it. So a lot of theories which are rejecting this idea that it requires human consciousness have to do with measurements made by machines, made by sensors and the sort of deal. Some other theories suggest that when there is this particle entanglement, it doesn't require human consciousness, but rather another particle for it to exist, for it to be collapsed into a particle from that wave function. In that video of the experiment that cracked reality, I emphasize on the idea that it's the intent, it's the very intention. It doesn't have to even be human consciousness. It has to be the intention of measuring something to make it real, which is what we do through our machines. The machine was created with an intention. There was an idea, a process, a mental process behind the creation of a machine, of a sensor, which is gonna measure a particle, so it is collapsed and it is brought into reality from the non-physical world. This is what I argue in that video, that what we're seeing with this double slit experiment is turning the non-physical into the physical. That's what we are doing when we're talking at the micro level. For many scientists, it is obvious that consciousness, the word consciousness, is required for this collapse of the wave function. And now, if we step a little bit outside of science, as I said, I'm going into a bit of a rabbit hole, and I've been studying this for a long time. And when you stack the evidence and you stack everything else. If we step outside of science for a second, and if we go into philosophy, and if we go into reports, into anecdotal reports, into the stack of evidence, and everything that, I mean, some of the things that I've been talking about in this channel, if you go into the reports from neither experiences, if you go into psychedelics, you find that people are saying this, that we're creating the world, we're living in some sort of hologram, some sort of illusion, and we can create with our own thoughts, we can modify certain things. If you go in depth and start thinking about the placebo effect, I'm gonna link the video below. I've talked about this. What is it suggesting? It is suggesting that through your mind, through your thoughts, you create specific results in your body, and that's what I'm talking about here. The implication is that if we are able to collapse the wave function into a particle with conscious observation, the same principle applies to the living cells within your body. This is what's behind this healing. I made a video a long time ago, I might link it below, I don't know, about how what's behind these prayer circles and this prayer as a method for healing, and what's behind it. It's not about prayer. I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about conscious intent, which has been shown in the studies that it has an effect. Now, as I said, we step a little bit outside of science. This is what things are suggesting. These people who come with the reports of meeting entities that tell them that they are creating their own life, that they can manifest anything they want, the situations, the health within their bodies, it's all pointing towards the same thing. It seems that we're living in some sort of hologram, some sort of illusion, and the intelligence behind the way that some of these subatomic particles can react or can manifest is something that we can tap into. And if we think about these theories of quantum consciousness I spoke about in that video, where I speak about how mammals dream about the world before they are born, it's all information, a theory of the soul. I talk about that Orco theory, that say that we gather that information within the cells in our brains. All this information is at the quantum world. When you think about near-death experiences and how people start talking about how they went outside their bodies and they saw their bodies and they had experiences from their point of view, from other people's point of view, who are they? Where are they? If you go into the literature on out-of-body experiences, and people are saying, yes, at first I needed some sort of a body, some sort of a light body. Then I realized I do not need a body when I'm at that state. I can create anything. I can go anywhere. If you go into ancient philosophies, into the Buddha, some of the Buddhist ideas that they say, when they are into this deep state of samadhi, this deep state of meditation, they can go through mountains. They can take their quote-unquote rainbow body and go into other realms. This is what people who are going through out-of-body experiences say. People who are going through some of the other altered states of consciousness say they don't need a body. What do the Christian ancient philosophy says? The spirit is all over. It's within you, it's without you, it's always being with you, and it will always be with you. It can go through mountains. It can move mountains. What we're talking about here is an interaction between the physical and the non-physical world. And what we're talking about is that we are starting to cement, as they say in this article, a full theory on quantum consciousness, a theory of the soul. If you're on the path of finding the truth about reality and our purpose as humans on Earth, the information that I have to share concerns you. After a lifetime of research in philosophies ranging from Buddhism to the occult, I've encountered themes and patterns along some baffling information that is beginning to be seriously studied by science. A Rational Divine Outline, The Ghost of Jesus, is the first iteration of this project, where I analyze the message of Jesus without dogmatism, fanaticism, or religious bias. You can find my work available on Amazon on the link below. If you find this work valuable, consider subscribing, sharing, and following me on social media, as it'll help others in the same path to find this information. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.